Blog Talk Radio.
Once again to Viatorian Voices, Conversations on the Way. Hi everyone, this is Jim Mitchell. Always a pleasure to be here and serve as host as we get the opportunity to speak to many different people from the Viatorian community across the country and really outside the country as well when we have the opportunity to talk international. Today we're going to focus on someone who has spent some time in different aspects of serving the Viatorian community throughout his career and took a very unique path as we welcome Father Greg Jones, Michigan native, a member of the Viatorian community, now retired and enjoying his time in Arizona, but still active. So, Father Greg, first of all, thank you for being here today. I'm really anxious to talk to you, so I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thanks, Jim. It's good to talk with you as well. Thanks for the call.
A very interesting background. We've talked to so many people who serve the Viatorian community, and the path each of them has taken is unique. Let's go back to you as a young man. Did you come from a family that was strong in its faith?
Pretty much middle of the road. My grandparents were very strong. My mom was a convert who was very strong. But generally, we went to Mass on Sundays, and I had a couple of years of Catholic schooling, but principally I was living in a lot of different places over the years, and there weren't Catholic schools available. So I think found a love for God later in life, maybe during my college years.
And, I think that's one of the unique things about the story we'll hear from you today. And I know this has occurred with several of the Viatorians that we've spoken to, but I believe you first professed your vows at or near the age of 40, and I want to talk about that path. Early on in your life, you just mentioned college years. Did you feel a pull towards religious life early and maybe just suppress that or not understand it, or did it really just come to you much later and when you realized that is where you wanted to be?
I grew up all over the world. My family's initially from Canada. I did go to University of Michigan, but I lived in Thailand, India, Korea, a number of places. And someplace in high school read a book called The Keys of the Kingdom, which is about a missionary in China. Kind of excited me about the idea of missions. And so for a long time, particularly in college, I was thinking about, well, probably it would be good for me to be a missionary. After college, I went into a Catholic volunteer program for the Diocese of Kansas City, Missouri, and was exposed to a very large mission community in Catholic Church called the Divine Word Mission. And I got involved with them, and through discernment came to understand that I would not survive in Ghana, West Africa, or Papua New Guinea. That, my idealism was great, but that really didn't work with the talents and the abilities that God had given me.
So even before that, coming to that realization, you mentioned reading the book and having the interest. What was it about the missionary life that you thought at that point would appeal to you?
I think, and this is going to sound perhaps odd, but to be a man for others, to love God and to show that love by serving other people. I think that was the start of it there. It sounds odd because you don't think of a college kid as being other-centered, but that was the pull for me, which is why after college I didn't, go and get the great job and that kind of stuff. Instead, I went and worked as volunteer for the bishop in the inner city in Kansas City.
And tell me what that process led you to in terms of that volunteer time and what it exposed you to and what other opportunities it led you to.
I served with a number of like-minded people. I lived in a house with a few other guys who also were there as volunteers. A lot of faith sharing and prayer, and also encountering the difficulties of living in the inner city and working with people who oftentimes are destitute.
And was there a point in time then at which you decided to formalize that commitment to pursue a religious life as a vocation, as opposed to just and not to minimize, but as opposed to the volunteer type path you had taken?
Right. Well, as I mentioned, I went with Divine Word Missions, and I joined that religious community. I worked in Southwest Louisiana and then in Mississippi a little bit. Got a real taste of what they call the home missions here in America, but also spent a lot of time interacting with guys who lived in all the corners of the world. And that's really how I discerned that I couldn't live the life that they lived. You know, God gives us each special abilities, and He gives us talents and personalities, and it takes someone really special to be in Jakarta or other places, Indonesia, East Timor. It takes a very special kind of person, and I came to understand I wasn't that guy.
Which is a valuable lesson to learn, and something that many of us, could easily grasp. But what about just being open to hearing God's call? You talked about evaluating your own abilities and skills and such, but was it hard for you to be listening, to understand that there was a call there?
Not at all. I felt like there was something I needed to do. After I left Divine Word Missions, I continued going to school, at grad school in Chicago, and earned a degree in divinity and a degree in theology, because I knew that I loved God and wanted to know more about God and about serving God. At the same time, I was in my 30s, and I developed a career in what they call behavioral medicine. I worked in hospital treatment programs for mental illness and addictions and alcoholism. In your 30s, you kind of try to get a life, excel. My peers were, getting great jobs and great homes and relationships, and I went along with that. I got a great job. I had a great home. On Lakeshore Drive, and the right car, and it was a really good life. But what happened to me was there was something missing. I had everything that I was, culture told me I needed, home, car, job, relationship, and I wasn't happy. There was something missing. And it was only when I surrendered to God, in my prayer life, that I said, okay, I'll let go of all these things you've given me, and I'll come back and join a religious community. And I'd known some Viatorians from the Catholic Theological Union, and I had a really dear friend who was a member of the community. That was kind of the entrance, if you will, to the Viatorians. I met some men who I held in such high esteem. The head of Catholic Theological Union at one point was a Viatorian named Jack Lannan, who was a theologian, but he had the ability to make God pure and simple. And I admired that. We had another great priest named Tom Langenfeld, who had been in Rome and just was kind and gentle and good and smart. And I admired him. I could keep going on. There's a list. Some really great guys I met in the Viatorians who kind of inspired me and encouraged me to join with them. My novice master, Father John Milton, used to say, throw your lot in. And really what he meant was give your life to God through us. And that's what I did. And, it sounds so odd after all these years, but I love my life. And I love the things that God has given me to do. I've worked in so many different places doing so many different things. I was a campus minister at a couple of universities. I worked at a cathedral in Las Vegas. I worked in parishes. I worked in a supermax prison as a chaplain for people who were locked down 23 hours a day. I could go on. There's just so many opportunities and so many places God has taken me. It's been a great journey, and I'm still there, still going. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating to hear, and you certainly explained some of the things there that I wanted to get into and talk about that Viatorian relationship as we continue our conversation with Father Greg Jones today. Were you surprised once you got into the Viatorian community that you took such a winding path, that all the different opportunities that presented themselves and the different roles you played? Because that does seem to be very much a consistent story with many of your peers in the community.
One of the things that I really admired and liked about Viatorians was an openness to letting guys find their place. Some guys would be university professors, some guys would be parish ministers, some guys would be high school teachers. And, you know, as I said, I tried all of those things. And I kind of was encouraged to find places that I would fit where I could serve. Because, you know, when you read about Viatorians, you know that how we understand ourselves is that we are called to serve, particularly those who don't account for much in the world.
And just a minute or two left here before we have to let you go, but along the way, did you and do you still have the opportunity to share your experiences with young people who themselves are trying to find a path, and are you able to have conversations and show them all that you went through and open opportunities for them?
Yeah, actually, that does happen. Parish that I work at here in Tucson, we have some young folks I've been talking with, a couple of guys in particular who are exploring where does God want to take them in their lives. And, you know, what I try to do is just be a listening ear. I remember from my own experience, it was most helpful when guys would kind of listen to me and then maybe give me a little feedback on what they heard me saying. And I try to duplicate that for these people that I talk with.
Well, it certainly has been a fascinating journey, I'm sure, for you and certainly for us to listen to Father Greg Jones, and appreciate your time to share with us a little bit today from Tucson. Very influential and informative discussion about the Viatorian community. And the Viatorian community proclaims Jesus Christ and His gospel and raises communities where faith is lived, deepened, and celebrated. The community is comprised of professed brothers and priests and lay associates. We didn't get to talk about that role today. I know we want to do much more of that in the future. On behalf of the Viatorian community, I'm Jim Mitchell. Thank you very much for listening. And as always, Saint Viator, pray for us. Adored and loved be Jesus.